When it comes to NFL content here on YouTube, draft grades are far from a new concept. You know, some people talk about their favorite draft classes and their least favorite draft classes. Someone might have a channel that's specifically dedicated to one team and only focus on that team's draft class. Somebody, like I did last year, might talk about the 8 divisions and break all of their draft grades up into 8 videos. Somebody else might just talk about the draft in its entirety in one video and then move on. All of those are very valid and very effective ways of getting your message across and talking about the NFL draft. However, because I did not make nearly as much pre-draft content as I wanted to, because being a college student, watching film, trying to have a social life, trying to make videos, and not driving yourself crazy is not exactly a great recipe for success, I kind of failed with that. So I decided, hey, let's make 32 videos throughout the summer talking about the 32 draft classes, give each team their own designated video to justify all that work we did pre-draft. And initially I was going to do that throughout the month of May and then move on. That fell through the cracks. So we bled into June. Didn't get it done in June. So we bled into July, and here we sit on July 30th, and I am just barely halfway done because life is hectic. So because of that, we are going to bleed once again into the month of August and hopefully get these done before the season starts. In fact, we will get these done before the season starts. But before we get into our next team, whoever that may be, I do just want to say real quick, keep in mind, I'm not a professional. I am just a 21-year-old college kid who likes to spend the free time he has watching tape. So, you know, if my opinion doesn't line up with your GM's or line up with yours, I'm not saying I'm better than you. I'm not saying I'm better than your GM or that I know better than your GM. I just had a different takeaway, and people seem to like when I give my opinions about this stuff on the internet, so I'm going to continue doing it because it's fun, and it helps me get my points across, right? It's a lot of fun. I enjoy making these videos. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars and what they did during the 2024 NFL Draft. I was originally going to start this video with a monologue about how bad Trent Baalke is at this whole general manager thing, but I think this draft class kind of speaks for itself, so we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. Starting out with one of 2 picks I thought were really nice in this draft, being Brian Thomas Jr., the wide receiver out of LSU. A consistent theme for Trevor Lawrence has been inconsistent receiver play, right? You take a look at some of the guys on this roster. Christian Kirk has not been the most consistent player, certainly not a #1 receiver. Calvin Ridley last year, the definition of inconsistent, one of the worst wide receiver ones in the sport. In fact, if I was a Jaguars fan, I'd be pretty damn happy he went to Tennessee because all he's going to do is make Will Levis look bad because of on-target drop percentage. There were so many throws where Trevor put the ball right in the bucket or right in his hands, right in Ridley's hands, and he just couldn't come down with it. You know, and a lot of those throws make people look at Trevor Lawrence like, wow, is he really good? Like, is he not worth the money he just got paid? Which I think is ridiculous. Trevor Lawrence is an elite quarterback. You know, he's one of the 10, 15 best quarterbacks in the sport easily. So getting him a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. who can be that true deep threat is awesome. And not only do you get him this true deep threat, but you get him through trading down. Now, granted, you got additional picks in the trade, which for another team, I would view as a real benefit. For a team with Trent Baalke as their GM, I view as, wow, more lottery tickets that you can throw in the trash, right? But in all seriousness, like, it was a really good trade. I'll give Baalke his flowers. It was a good trade. You trade down 6 spots, you get the guy you're probably going to take at 17 anyways, so it's a good pickup. Taking a look at Thomas as a player, you've got a receiver who's standing at a cool 6'3", 209 pounds. But not only is he big, he's fast, and he can accelerate really, really well. Really good separator. He's got good foot speed, and that acceleration plus his agility allow him to offset DBs and get really nice releases. He's able to lure DBs in by leaning and acting as if he's going to cut inside before exploding the other way and getting himself downfield. He has really good zone awareness, which will allow him to effectively attack soft spots and sit down against zone coverage. He's able to work back to the quarterback and has the awareness to keep himself on the move during scramble drills, when the play extends, things like that, which is great for Trevor because Trevor loves to keep the play alive as much as possible. He's really, really good at improvising. So Brian Thomas is going to work very well with him. He's got a really natural, smooth ability to track the ball over his shoulder. He's got a really solid baseline of release moves to stack that he can stack quickly and beat corners off the line of scrimmage. He's a great 50-50 ball winner with elite focus, body control, and hand-eye coordination. He had a 56% contested catch rate 2 years ago at LSU, and then last year he had a 58% contested catch rate. That's great. If your guy's shooting over 50%, that's what you want. He's able to quickly transition from catch to after the catch, you know, being able to run after the catch with creativity and shiftiness. So basically, you're getting this like perfect, explosive, deep threat for Trevor Lawrence. Now I know you just gave Gabe Davis money, excuse me, to kind of be that, but Brian Thomas is better. And I would say pretty confidently when he steps on the field day one, he's going to be better than Gabe Davis. You know, I'm not a big Gabe Davis guy. I think most of us at this point in our lives are kind of past the whole Gabe Davis playoff wonder plays, but I think Thomas is going to fit really, really well in this offense. Of course, you know, as a rookie, he's going to have some weaknesses. He's got a relatively underdeveloped route tree, although he is great on verticals, crossers, and drags, stuff that Trevor's really good at throwing. He could be more abrupt to sell head fakes, so he is really good at that lean, like I mentioned, but, you know, another part of faking DBs and creating separation is selling with your eye movements, with your head. Not necessarily great there. He likes to use his whole body, which will cause him to lose a little bit of momentum, so you want to see him use that head a little bit more in those situations. He also needs to work on blocking out contact throughout the route. You know, if he's going up against a more physical corner that's going to jam him at the line of scrimmage and follow him and stick to him throughout the play, he's far too willing to let him kind of push Thomas off of his route, and you want to see that improve. This is a 6'3", 210, 209-pound receiver. You want to see him not have to worry about that. You just want to see him be a little more physical in general. Again, he had a good contested catch rate, but he could stand to be a little more physical at point of attack. You'd also like to see some more consistency with his blocking because of that size and that, you know, physicality, or that desired physicality. And his routes have a lot of wasted movement, which is something you obviously want to see improve. But I do think he was well worth a first-round pick. He was my wide receiver 6 in this class. I thought he was fantastic. I think this is great value. I think this is a great player. Reminds me a lot of Christian Watson in a good way, right? He reminds me of the idea of Christian Watson, is a better way to put it. Because you see Christian Watson, this big, deep threat receiver who's super fast, super twitchy, can move after the catch, you can run the ball with him, you know, you're doing all this crazy stuff with him at North Dakota State, and then he gets to the NFL and he can't stay healthy. I don't think that's going to be the case for Brian Thomas, you know, knock on wood, hopefully he stays healthy, but he is what I think a lot of us wanted Christian Watson to be, and that's huge, because I was a huge Christian Watson guy coming out, so I love Brian Thomas. I think he's somebody that's going to make Trevor's life a hell of a lot easier. I think he's going to be super productive in this offense. Wouldn't be shocked to see him as a 1,000-yard receiver his rookie year. I think he's going to quickly emerge as Trevor's favorite target. You know, he made Jaden Daniels look like a prolific deep ball passer at LSU. And if you watch my Commanders video, you know how I feel about Jaden Daniels. I don't think he's very good. So if he was able to make a guy like Daniels look good, imagine what he's going to do with a guy like Trevor, who is elite, right? I think we're going to see some pretty beautiful stuff coming out of Jacksonville. And that's where the praises being sung stops for a little while. So you get to the second round and they take Mason Smith, the defensive tackle, out of LSU. I just don't get it. I don't. There is a world where this could work out. I will say that up front. You know, big guy, athletic, getting to work with Eric Armstead, really good mentor. But I just don't see it. Now, I wanted to give this a worse grade, but I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt for one reason. I know giving them a D isn't exactly the benefit of the doubt, but this was an F at one point. So, the reason I say that is because you look at some of the defensive linemen available, some of the defensive tackles available. I just don't see a world where he's better than a Chris Jenkins in particular, or a Michael Hall Jr. However, Michael Hall Jr. just got arrested for being a piece of shit. So I'm willing to say, okay, maybe from their interview, they picked up, or if they interviewed him, maybe they met with the combine. I don't actually know off the top of my head. But we're just going to say through the grapevine, at least, they picked up that Michael Hall has some less than ideal personality traits that might lend themselves to a domestic abuser. If that's the case, I'm a little more lenient to this pick. However, we don't know that for sure. So I'm kind of like putting the grade in the middle. Because like if it comes out that they knew that 100%, then I'm willing to say this is like a D+, a C-. But if they didn't know, then this is, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt for passing on the guy. But I still think it's bad process picking Mason Smith. Because he's just such a raw player. And again, if you wanted a raw player, Chris Jenkins was right there and does more of the run defending stuff that you're going to want out of this guy, playing him next to Eric Armstead right away. And also Jenkins has a lot of the upside as a pass rusher. Whereas you look at Smith, I see why Balaki wanted him. He has 35-inch arms. This is the same exact thing that happened with Trayvon Walker. You see a guy with athletic tools and long arms, and Balaki says, gimme, 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 me want, gimme, have it, right? I'm not going to say it didn't work out the last time, but Trayvon Walker is certainly no Aiden Hutchinson. He's no Kayvon Thibodeau. And a lot of us could have told you that on draft night. Now, he's fine. Not #1 overall pick material. And that's kind of what I see being the best outcome for Mason Smith, where he's fine, but Chris Jenkins ends up being a borderline all-pro 3 technique. Or, you could have addressed a different position. I'll talk about that in a second. But taking a look at Smith, right? Like I already said, big frame, wicked length, has the athletic tools, super high potential. He's a very strong player, and he is intense. Like, he wants it. So he's going to be a pretty okay run defender. There were moments where he looked really dominant at LSU. That's going against guys that might not make it to the league once he gets to the NFL. I don't know if we'll see as much of that dominance. We'll have to see. He's pretty difficult to block one-on-one. He's able to stack and shed pretty quickly. He has a swim move that he's capable of winning with, but even then, that's just sprinkled in. That's not a consistent thing. That's something you're seeing flashes of. He has a quick first step, pretty solid bend. In fact, I would say surprising bend for someone who was 6'4", or 6'5", 306 pounds. And he's still young. Played under 1,000 snaps in college. However, run diagnostics, non-existent. Completely raw as a run defender. He's got the strength and he's able to shed blocks. Everything else, from the mental aspect of things to angles to splitting the gap, anything like that, he is raw. In fact, I would go even further to say he has a long, long way to go to develop there. And on top of that, even though he has this really, really good length and size and he's strong, his bull rush is so underwhelming. Like, it's certainly a technique thing because he's got the size, he's got the strength, but he's just not good at getting up into somebody and pushing them back or forklifting them. It's just not a thing. And from someone who's 6'5", 306 pounds, you'd think you would be able to do that more consistently. And a big reason why that's such an issue is his pad level is incredibly inconsistent. He's somebody who, fires off the ball straight up, and that's going to be a problem. You got to get low, especially when you're somebody who's 6'5". You really got to work your ass off to get low, and he just doesn't do it. He doesn't have much in the way of a pass rushing tool belt. It's just kind of, hey, here's a swim move every once in a while. Other than that, I'm going to try to go through you. If I can't go through you, tough shit. On top of that, he tore his ACL in 2022, which isn't great. But overall, I think he's just somebody that could have benefited from sticking around another year. He was a redshirt sophomore, right? Play another year. Come out next year. Be a lot more polished, be a lot more developed. Here, he's super raw. Jacksonville is not a place I have a ton of faith in to develop a defensive lineman, so I'm concerned. I'm very concerned. If this would have been a place where I'm like, okay, I see the, I see they've got the people in place to develop them, say Las Vegas, Cleveland, San Francisco, somewhere like there, different story. Jacksonville, I have very little faith in their ability to develop this guy. On top of that, the bigger issue I have is you look at this defensive line, they didn't necessarily need a guy like Mason Smith, and I get it, you're drafting him for the future. But what they needed was a corner. They really, really needed a corner. You look at Mason Smith, he was drafted with the 48th pick, right? Take a look at some of the corners left. Just scrolling through the Wikipedia page for the NFL draft, Mike Samerstill was still there. Ennis Rakestraw Jr. was still there. Renardo Green was still there. Andrew Phillips was still there. I mean, you have so many, like, day one studs that you could have plugged in that are at corner, and you pass on them for another developmental defensive lineman who's long, and that's kind of it. Long and athletic, right? I don't love that. And then that bleeds into their next pick being Jarrian Jones, the corner out of Florida State University. Because now you could have taken a corner instead of Mason Smith, so you're settling for Jones, who is fine, 6 foot, 190 pounds, very competitive, fiery player, good size, good strength, doesn't let receivers get a lot of leverage on him. He has good enough long speed. He's a really good tackler, tries his ass off in the run game. But he's somebody that's not going to catch up to your faster receivers. He's not great at gathering momentum against hook and curl and comeback routes, be able to come back to the ball and make a play. His footwork, as soon as he gets beat, becomes totally off kilter. His hips aren't super fluid. He has short arms. He's going to be 23 as a rookie. Like, you passed on some really damn good corners to take Mason Smith. And here you are taking Jarrian Jones, who projects as a nickel, but put on his best tape by far on the outside. In the nickel, I had a lot of concerns with his ability to, react quickly to what was happening in front of him, right? His reaction time out of the nickel is not great. He's also 6 foot, 190 pounds. You want a nickel corner to be a little bit bigger than that. So I don't know. I think this is a fine pick. Like, I think Jones is a fine player. I think you can find a spot for him to contribute. It's just the idea that you could have had a much better corner in the second round when that is a position you really need. Like, you've got Tyson Campbell. Tyson Campbell's great. Love Tyson Campbell. Outside of him, you've got Ronald Darby, Christian Braswell, Amani Arawarie, Monteric Brown. Like, am I supposed to jump for joy at this cornerback room? Am I supposed to look at this and say, yes, they are set at corner. They did not need to worry. They can pass on good corners for a developmental defensive lineman that probably won't see the field within the next 2 years. That is what they needed here in the second round. That is how they're keeping up with their division mates in the Houston Texans, who are reloading and building up this monster roster, and the Indianapolis Colts, who have all these great pieces in place. If Anthony Richardson puts it together, they're going to be superstars. You have the second best quarterback. I might even say the best quarterback in this division right now. And you're building up his defense poorly. That's the best way I can put it. Poorly. He did a great job getting him a number one receiver in Brian Thomas. I think Brian Thomas can be a number one in this league. Then you follow it up with two players on the defense who are not going to help him right now. And quite frankly, I don't have a ton of confidence are going to help him long term. Mason Smith might develop. That'd be great. That's 3-4 years from now. I just don't see it. And listen, I understand the idea of taking a developmental defensive tackle if defensive tackle is a big need, or if you don't have needs at other positions where there's really good players left. Yeah, I just don't see it. I don't see it. So Jarrian Jones, he could be a very solid player. I don't see him as a starting outside corner. That's probably where he's going to play in Jacksonville, and that worries me. So we'll have to see. We will have to see. As we get into the fourth round, they made 2 picks. And this is literally the yin and yang, right? Start up with Javon Foster, the offensive tackle out of Mizzou. Great pick. Loved Javon Foster. I had an early to a mid-4th round grade on him. You take him right about where I would have taken him. And I think this is a really, really solid pick. You got somebody who's got the length, he's got the size, great hand usage. Super, super refined hand usage. He does a great job of protecting his outside shoulder, isn't going to get beat on the outside very often. He's able to mirror up and down the arc by using his leverage to put up a wall against quicker pass rushers. He's a very instinctive blocker who plays with his head on a swivel in both phases, so as a run blocker and as a pass blocker. He does a great job of understanding and quickly hitting his marks. He has great mental processing against twists, stunts, and blitzes. He's explosive off the ball, really quick to lunge back into his pass blocking sets, and very quick to get up and off the line of scrimmage. Good enough core strength to absorb bull rushes. Not crazy, but good enough. Gets the job done. He's able to contort his body to mirror defensive linemen without losing balance or power. He possesses the quickness and lateral agility to serve as an effective pull blocker. I already said he has an excellent first step. Textbook technique as a run blocker. Great run blocker. Does a great job on double teams, and he has experience in both zone and power blocking schemes. That being said, not the fastest guy in the world. Footwork's a little clunky. Hands could be a little stronger, a little more pop in his punches. And he's not exactly the nastiest run blocker, right? You want a run blocker that wants to kill somebody. He's very much a, hey, move. This isn't, I'm going to run through you and make you regret the day you were born, like you want to see out of a lot of tackles. This is more of a, hey, I'm going to move you. And that's okay. This isn't, looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. This isn't like that. I'm not saying he's soft. He's just not a killer. And that's okay. He's more of a pass blocker anyways. So I look at this and I say, you know what? Jacksonville's got some solid tackles, right? Cam Robinson's all right. Anton Harrison's good. Javon Foster could play guard for you if you really need him to. I think he has, when you look at his profile, sure, he's not super fast, but he's quick enough to get up and out of his stance as quickly as you'd want to see a guard get out. He's a good pull blocker, really smart, really good hand usage. Like, I think he's somebody you can kick inside and see some really, really solid results on the inside. Excuse me. You look at a guy like Brandon Sheriff's not getting any younger. Ezra Cleveland is okay. So, I think this is a great pick. This is the type of planning for the future pick that I like, because you're taking somebody that isn't a total blank slate. You're doing it in the 4th round. You don't have poor precedent at this position in terms of development. And he's versatile. With Mason Smith, he's going to be a 3 technique, right? You want him to be a 3 technique. If he's your nose tackle, he fit, right? Because that athleticism, you're wasting it at nose tackle. Javon Foster, he can play tackle, he can play guard. That's great. I think that's a great pick. Gave that an A+. 2 picks later, they take Mason Smith's teammate, Jordan Jefferson, the defensive tackle out of LSU. Not a big fan of this pick either. Really, really not a fan of this pick. First of all, Jordan Jefferson, kind of an asshole, kind of a head case. You look at the Senior Bowl, this is somebody who was pretty consistently getting manhandled. And he ended up ripping his helmet off and swinging at, I think it was Christian Haynes out of UConn, one of the interior linemen. You can't be doing that, man. Like, I get you get frustrated. Tensions are high on the football field. I absolutely get that. It's the fucking Senior Bowl. You are a senior in college in order to be at the Senior Bowl, if not a 5th-year senior. You need to show that you are mature, that you are professional, that you can, act the part. Didn't do that. There's no reason why this guy should have been taken in the 4th round. You should not be taking a guy in the 4th round who cannot be professional at the Senior Bowl a couple months before the NFL draft, the biggest night of the man's life, on top of not being that good. Like Jordan Jefferson, his appeal is run defense. He's a big guy. You look at the size, 6'2", 313 pounds, 33 and an 1/8 inch arms. Like, he's a nose tackle. He's built like a nose tackle. Not that great at it. His pad level's way too high. He stands straight up after the snap, has no pop in his punches. Footwork is really sloppy. Movement skills are straight up underwhelming. No speed. Hand fighting needs a lot of work. And he's not somebody that you're going to be able to, send across to gap. He's just going to stand up and try to eat a little bit of space. And when you stand straight up, you lose that leverage, you lose that anchor, it's easier to move you. Top of that, he's not a good pass rusher at all. Now, I will say, he's okay at getting up off the line, it's just he's straight up when he gets up. His upper body is very strong, but that's only going to get you so far when you're standing straight up. He rarely gets put on the ground, but he will get displaced pretty often. He has a high motor, but that doesn't matter if you're not in position. His feel for the ball is pretty good, but it doesn't matter if you're not in position. and he's good at filling gaps. So if they can do with him what the Bears did with Gervon Dexter and can say, hey, buddy, listen, don't stand up. Don't stand up. Then maybe there's a world where he's a good rotational nose. But in the 4th round, when there are still like good defensive linemen on the board that can do more than just be a rotational nose, you know, you look at a guy like Tyler Davis, who's just a straight up good nose. You'll get a guy like Christian Boyd, who is far better. Levi Drake Rodriguez has been killing it in Minnesota's minicamp. Like, he's somebody that would be great to add, or would have been great to add. Marcus Harris out of Auburn went in the 7th round. Could have waited and grabbed him. He's much better. Like, I just don't see the vision at all with Jefferson. I really, really don't. And again, this is another situation. You look, this was pick 416. 4-1-16, right? 4-1-16. Take a look at some of the corners taken after 4-1-16. Oh, you got a TJ Tampa. You got a Tarheeb Still. You got a Cam Hart. You got a Chris Abrams Drain. Kalen Carson was still on the board. Like, Quantez Stiggers was still there. DJ James was still there. I could go on and on. There were a lot of really good corners left, so you could have doubled down on corner, which is a much bigger need than defensive tackle. But instead, you double down on these defensive tackles and think, yep, we got one guy who's a total projection and another guy who's kind of an asshole and also a total projection. Good work. Corner room's still fucked. I just don't get it. And then they take poor DeAndre Prince here out of Mississippi. He's not a bad player. Like, he's fine. You know, he's a physical player. He's strong. He's a good tackler. He's able to stop runners like in their tracks. Really good athletic testing. Good zone recognition. He's able to close space and quickly burst downhill. He's aggressive and fills the run with authority. Really, really good against the run if that's not apparent. He has really good hand skills, really good ball skills. He's able to high point the ball and take it out, pluck it out of thin air. He's able to reroute receivers in off coverage and off the line of scrimmage. He has experience inside and outside. Like, he's a fine corner. But now they're forced into taking him over guys that are better because they took these 2 defensive tackles that just aren't that good. And on top of that, DeAndre Prince isn't perfect. You got to talk about the weaknesses. Skinny, doesn't have length, hands are small, not really good at defending the ball when it's going vertically. He's going to be beaten downfield, and he's not really good at contesting at the catch point. Bites on double moves way too often, especially when it comes to head fakes. He's going to get stuck on blocks when he's, triggering downhill against the run. So if he can get there uncontested, he'll stop a guy in his tracks, but he's not great at shedding blocks. Despite that really good athletic testing, his 3-cone testing was not great, which is because of his very tight hips. He's a little on the older side, and he has very little experience out of the slot, which is where he projects best. So he's a little bit of a developmental corner, but hey, this is the 5th round. This is where you take a guy like that and feel pretty good about it. Here we are. This is the 2nd corner they're taking. I'm just so mad about how they addressed the secondary in this class. And it would be different if they had taken players that I, saw the vision with, right? Instead of Mason Smith, you took a Chris Jenkins, and then instead of Jordan Jefferson, you took one of the other defensive linemen I mentioned. Just throw out, a Christian Boyd. Then I wouldn't be nearly as mad, because then it's like, at least the players you took in place of the corners you need are good. So it's really tough. It's really, really tough. I think DeAndre Prince can be a very, very solid depth corner. It just sucks that they're in the position they were taking him. And then 13 picks later, they take Keelan Robinson, running back out of Texas. And this is another example of just why. Like, where is the fit here? You look at Keelan Robinson. He's a scat back, dude. 5'8", 191 pounds. He's got good speed, good agility, good change of direction. He's patient. He's able to, really catch the ball out of the backfield. He showed a lot of potential there, despite limited opportunities. He's a fluid pass catcher, really good at tracking the ball. He's somebody that you can play a little bit of everywhere. You know, one of those like satellite players. Play him at running back, receiver, wherever. And whenever he like picks a lane, he's really quick to burst through it, right? Problem is in Jacksonville, that's not really what you need at running back. What you need is someone who's got a little more pop, a little more power, right? The illustrious power back. Believe it or not, they do still exist. I know the national media wants you to believe that they don't, but they do, and they are important, and they are loved, and quite frankly, they are necessary for a good run game. You look at a guy like Kamani Vidal was still available, Isaiah Davis out of South Dakota State, you know, a Jawar Jordan even. Like, there were some nice running backs. Frank Gore Jr. went undrafted. He should have been picked up. You know, guys that are just gravity, you know, a little bit of a lower center of gravity, able to get down and dirty, play aggressive between the tackles, pick up tough yards. That's what they needed. They didn't need another Travis Etienne. Like, are you really going to take Travis Etienne off the field to get Keelan Robinson involved? Is that really something you want to do? I don't get that at all. Like, yeah, you've got Tank Bigsby, you've got Dearness Johnson. I'm not a huge fan of either of those guys. I really think they could have benefited. They were going to add another running back to add a power back. Or if you really wanted a receiving back, if you were really like, listen, we need another scat back, that's the ideal takeaway here. Dylan Laube out of New Hampshire, excuse me, was still right there. One of the best receiving backs in this class, right there. Could have taken him. Keelan Robinson will be fine. You know, he'll probably just be a fine third, fourth running back, and that's okay. I just think there were some guys that were some real missed opportunities here. And that kind of goes with him and Prince both. Like, it's the 5th round. It's not the end of the world. It's just there were guys that were better that, you know, really would have fit in this offense or defense, respectively. And my main issue is less with taking these players and more taking them over other guys. And then here in the 6th, 7th round, I know I've been so passionate about the rest of this draft class. I don't really have any thoughts on Cam Little or Miles Cole here. I don't watch or evaluate kickers. So, you know, if he hits field goals, good. If he doesn't, oh, well, it's the 6th round, right? I'm not going to say that's good or bad. I've never watched the guy play football, so I can't really say. It wouldn't be fair for me to grade him. And then as for Miles Cole, I've heard some horror stories. I've heard that this is just another guy with long arms, but kind of has no idea what he's doing. I haven't watched him play, at least not that I know of. I'm sure I've seen him in passing, but, you know, I haven't actually sat down to watch Miles Cole film. So that's another situation where I'm just not going to give them a grade. It just doesn't feel fair. You know, I'm not going to say this is good process or bad process if it's a guy I've never watched or consciously watched play football, excuse me. But, you know, physically he fits the profile. Long arms, big dude. So I get why Balake would want him. But as a whole, don't love this draft class if it's not apparent. I love Brian Thomas and I love Javon Foster. I think they are going to be big-time pieces on the Jaguars. I think Brian Thomas is going to be one of your biggest offensive weapons very quickly. And I think Foster, if he doesn't end up starting at tackle sometime soon, he will be a starting guard on this football team within the next 3 years. As for some of the other guys, Jones and Prince, I can see a world where they're at least contributors as depth pieces. Same thing with Robinson. Still think there were better guys available at those positions that I absolutely would have rather have seen them take. But I digress. And I'm not going to repeat what I have to say about the D tackles. Like, just to be a little positive, just to be nice, because I don't want to be the negative Nancy here. Like, I would love to see Mason Smith develop. I would love to see him turn into this massive athletic freak and be a superstar. But that's going to take a lot. And I don't have a lot of faith in the Jaguars coaching staff. I don't have a lot of faith in this organization and the culture that has been built and the development crew that has been put in place. I think he's going to be another Trayvon Walker situation where he ends up fine, but there's a lot of wasted potential. A lot of wasted potential, and I think that's the best way to put it. And then as for Jefferson, I mean, dude's got to get his shit together. You know, we can't be losing our shit at the Senior Bowl. We really can't. Just because you're getting your ass beat by competition doesn't mean you need to pull your helmet off and act like Myles Garrett. We don't need that. But I'm going to give him a D+. Probably one of the worst drafts they've had. Really getting carried by that Thomas and Foster pick, those 2 picks. But hey, I mean, honestly, if all these guys in this draft fail except for Thomas and Foster, and they are both what I think they can be, then I still consider that a win to a certain extent. Because you finally get Trevor, that #1 receiver he's needed, and more beef up front to protect your quarterback is always a good thing. So we'll have to see. The Jaguars, they got to get their shit together. They really got to start picking up the pace because the rest of the AFC South is passing them quickly. Still get the Titans lagging behind, but Houston and Indy, they are going to be a nightmare if the Jaguars don't figure out how to football very, very soon.
Had a chance on the throwback.
This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow.
Using that